am PagerDuty's Distinguished Field Engineer, which is just a very nice way of saying I'm old. I am a field CTO, so my responsibility is working with clients across the globe on their strategic initiatives, how to build digital transformation capabilities, take their strategic pieces. I was at IBM for a long time, have been in product management, worked with ServiceNow, and APM. As mentioned, I used to fly satellites for a living, which was very interesting. Father of 4 boys, married to the prettiest girl in Texas, follow her Instagram, and I love to cook. And so here's my ask to you. Anybody that can get me a Tandoor to Texas in the next month, call me, because I really, really need one now. Got 7 grills and smokers at home, but I always, every time I come to India, I'm reminded that that's what I'm missing out of my life. So let's dive into it. So we're going to start with what is AIOps, right? Here is the fantastic thing, and I think this is one of the reasons that the market is so confused, vendors are confused, and certainly us as consumers and buyers are confused, because nobody can decide what the heck it really means, right? Gartner actually came up with the category and called it AIOps. Here is a fantastic way to win a bar bet with your friends. AIOps actually didn't start out with AI, artificial intelligence. It started with algorithmic IT operations. So just so you know. So they started it, but then Forrester came along, modified it a little bit. 451 had something different to say. IDC's had something different to say. And I think this is where a lot of it comes from, right? Is that it was out and sold to central IT as this level of snake oil that it was going to solve the world's problems. We were all going to be sitting on beaches in Goa, drinking Mai Tais, life was going to be easy, systems were going to take care of themselves. Weirdly, that hasn't happened yet, right? And it's not going to happen. Systems are very complex, and the ways that we have to deal with them are very complex, but it's certainly a matter of how do we begin to create better focus, and I think there's some ways that we can begin to do that and begin to think about it, right? So let's erase all of that, right? And when you're talking to vendors and looking at things in this space, the ones that come at you and tell you AI is going to solve everything, right? Guess what? It's not, right? So lead in, it helps. Machine learning does some interesting things. But so what do we really care about, right? What we really want to figure out is that we are drowning in an ocean of data. I don't think there is anyone in this room that would like more data in their organization. Anyone? Because your data, your storage salespeople would love you to have some more data, right? Because you have to have more places to put it, secure it, manage it, archive it, tag it, right? We're not wanting for more data, but you know what we are dying for? Information. We're dying for that context of what does that data mean to us and how are we able to create capabilities from it. So, and we're also seeing that the amount of data being generated across organizations is obviously growing at exorbitant rates. As we move into now, I'm working with organizations that talk about exabytes of data, right, over a weekly basis. It's an insane amount. So how do we begin to distill that down to the things that really matter? And where we find that from is we begin with how can we actually look at and just say, can we just get to events? Can I begin to take the signals from it that really matter, right? Because you've already got tools that are monitoring logs, traces, traps, metrics, all of these things that are out here. So what if instead we took those various signals, including the things we were coming to customers, and started with this event capability, right? That's the heart of AIOps, obviously, is how do I move at machine speed? I have to move at event speed. But here's the interesting thing. When I'm moving at event speed, as much as 10, 15 million events per day, guess what? People can't handle that, right? That's an awful lot of data. So now we need automation. And automation is going to be that thing that says, what if automation is the first thing, it becomes the other side of our event handler that helps us be smarter about those events that are coming in, that are helping us move from that data to that context, the capability. So what does that begin to look like? And how do we begin to take things such as really think about automated diagnostics, for example, which we're going to talk about more in a second and why that's so important. Obviously automated resolution, right? IBM first defined autonomic computing in 1993. That was the first version of we were all going to be sitting on the beaches and going, it's all going to be fantastic, right? Again, didn't happen. So, but how do we do those things where we can actually get down to? And I have worked with clients that have been able to, get tight problem signatures and be able to really drive down MTTR to 60 to 90 seconds for some of the things that they do. But in the end, and I think this is the key thing, So many things what we see, whether you're talking to APM vendors, whether you're talking to AIOps vendors, whether you're talking to anybody in our space, why do they keep leaving people out of it? Best-in-class automation that I've seen worldwide, end-to-end capabilities for automated incident response, maybe 15%. Maybe. Most organizations, sub 2%. Does that sound about right for y'all? Is anybody way ahead on that I don't know about? If so, come find me, because I really want to have a conversation. So we always need people. But everybody talks about machine learning and AI and all these things and speed. Where's the people? We need you. Your organizations need you to solve these complex problems. So we need to be event-driven, but we need to be automation first and still people-centric. So what are the real problems that we're actually trying to solve as we step away from kind of the big ugly word of AIOps? Well, we got too much noise. Is that familiar to people in here? Just way too much? We actually have seen inside of PagerDuty a 70% year-over-year increase in the amount of noise inside of customers' environment. 70%. Compound that over the next 4 years, you're talking about a 5-fold increase in the amount of data and ingestion we're going to have to try and figure out. We can't do that with the tools that we are using today. It is untenable, right? When we went out and polled, almost 70% of our DevOps and ITOps customers told us they don't know how to manage what's there. The second big thing that we're seeing is, great. I've spent all of my time on my APM and my monitoring. I've made great investments in my automated thresholding. I know exactly how I've deployed things. I've tied it to my pipeline. Everything's bright, beautiful, and fantastic. And I'm going to turn around and go, hey, Adele, there's a DogFox 977 error in MySQL. Cool. What does that mean? Is it prod or is it non-prod? Is it customer impacting? What's the blast radius? Have I got an SLA or SLO against it? Who's on call for this? What is the run book for it? What are the diagnostics that I need to solve the problem? What is potential remediation around these things, right? It's not sufficient just to be able to produce an error in a timely manner. Especially when we demand so much from our organizations. Those of you that have made investments in SRE teams, right? We demand so much from SREs, don't we? You have to know from the bottom of the stack all the way to the application layer. How are you ever going to hire new people on your team? Right? Today they're counting on the folks like you in the room. Counting on the folks like me who are a little gray-headed, right? Because we've seen it. We know where the things are at. How do we grow? We have to help create context around that and start to drive that down. And lastly, dealing with toil and unplanned work. Fantastic book. Any of you that are in leadership positions, I encourage you to check it out if you're looking at streamlining your operations. It's a book called Making Work Visible. And in that, the author actually cites something that globally, we spent $1 trillion on unplanned work in 2021. Over $1 trillion US dollars. And if you think about that, think about your last week. I mean, just literally stop for a second. This last week, how many times were you interrupted by unplanned work? By a page, you got an alert, there's an incident that's happened that got assigned to you, right? It is ongoing, and it is stopping us from really accomplishing the goals that we had. I talk to a lot of engineers. I talk to a lot of folks in ops. I love our business. I have yet to meet anyone that says, you know what I really love? If you could wake me up at 2 a.m. to go clean up temp files, I would love that, right? But it's 2023 and we're still doing that. We came into this to solve interesting problems, hopefully to make decent money, to build things. And we can't do that if we're running around dealing with garbage and the toil and things out of that. So how do we begin to remove that? So this is what we want to think about. It's just simply, can I reduce noise? Can I reduce my time to resolution and create context? And can I remove toil? So what does it mean to be able to do this? Well, first, I need something that's easy to get started, right? I talk to people all the time. It's like, look, you may have a 2-year massive operational digital transformation issue, but you also have Tuesday problems. Let's work on the Tuesday problems, right? How do we do that right now? Because guess what? If you get your hours back in your Tuesday, the big stuff takes care of itself. You're getting those hours back. You now have the focus from the right people on your teams you're demanding from for them to be able to do that. So it's got to be something else that I can't slow down. So many times I've seen these organizations that are like, all right, we're essentially going to stop for a month, or 2 months, or 3 months, because we've got to fix stuff, right? How quickly do you fall behind? How fast are your competitors moving? One of the most interesting things I continue to see in India is speed. I was in Mumbai last week, was in Singapore before that, and had 5 meetings yesterday over 14 hours. And the constant theme is speed. We can't go fast enough. And I know that, and I know you're feeling that, right? So how do we make sure we're able to do things in a way that say, we can't slow down? Also, if the solution that somebody brings to you around this is, oh, just create a data lake and throw data scientists at it. Anybody got data scientists coming to you looking for work? Saying, please hand me more things to do? No, because those people are working with your marketing teams. They're working with your sales teams. They're looking for the next set of capabilities on how we can, drive that next dollar. They're not there to get an hour out of your day, right? So you don't have data scientists sitting on a bench. But most importantly, and I think this is the fun thing, right, is that when, everybody talks about, we're going to give you actionable intelligence. Great, where's the action, right? How's that actually happening? What does that mean? Because here is one of my biggest takeaways from this. What does MTTR mean? Mean time to resolution. Man, you guys are sharp. I love a good crowd. Guess what? It doesn't mean mean time to root cause. Yet, every single vendor you talk to in the APM space, the observability space, and most of the AIOps space, right, what they tell you is we're going to reduce MTTR. Are they really reducing MTTR? Right? Are they fixing the problem? No, there's a webhook out on the end or a little box on the PowerPoint chart that says, now fix it, right? Like that just magically happens. Like you've just thrown beans on the ground and it just appears, No, you've still got to fix the problem. So this has got to be a central way we have to think about the problem is, can I reduce noise, create context, remove toil, and fix the problem? So when we think about this, I mentioned earlier, I love our business. I also hate our business. I love our business because I get to spend time with folks like you. Folks that are trying to create interesting things, have interesting problems, are trying to move at speed, are thinking about the next big thing, right? I hate our business because we're not recognized for it, right? When was the last time anyone in this room, what do you do, sir? What are you responsible for in your organization?
I'm a senior lead architect in OS config.
Fantastic. When was the last time somebody came to you and said, you know what? Yesterday, all the configs and automation worked. It was perfect. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the work that you've done. You're an amazing human being, and I should give you a promotion.
4 years back.
You're 4 years ahead of anyone else here. It doesn't happen, does it? Why? Because we're the moles and trolls in the basement. We're only recognized when something goes wrong, right? We are really bad at telling our own stories. We are not good at it. I had a client had just a fantastic story with, they deployed PagerDuty, just the core incident response stuff. They loved it. Had a 70% reduction in MTTR, 80% reduction in MTTA. Thrilled to death. Wanted to get some more licenses. Went back to senior management. Totally shut down. Not interested. Why? Well, because that's what I pay you for. If you're working a few extra hours a week to solve problems, not my issue, right? They didn't tell the right story. And we do this all the time. I one time saw an organization go through a massive, massive cloud transformation. Actually, one of the best I've ever seen. Came in slightly over budget, but on time. Really amazing work. And they got to the end, and their lead chart to the organization was, we've successfully done the cloud transformation. Next slide. We have improved VM density by 14%. Do you think anybody in that room cared that they increased VM density? No. The lead was they had actually saved $800,000 in CapEx and $400,000 in OpEx. But that was like the 14th slide down, right? Don't bury the lead. We do this all the time. We can wrap our arms around these things. MTTR, MTTA, mean time between business failures, first touch resolution. We're good at that stuff. And so we tend to gravitate toward it. Here's the hint. Nobody else cares, right? When you're going through these kinds of transformations, when you're looking at new technology, speak the language of the people that care, right? Because what we're seeing is that the CIOs are effectively becoming the operating officers in your organizations. They have more pull. You're all digital. That's how you're moving right now. So I want you to think about instead, remember my friends I talked about earlier that couldn't get their PagerDuty licenses? If we went back and looked in the organization, we actually saw that they had a 30% reduction in developer turnover in where they were at. Wouldn't that have been a much better story? Right? How much does it cost to go out and attract that and keep that kind of talent? Think about it, and look, correlation's not causation, I get it. But anytime you go through a major organizational overhaul, anytime you take a big tech initiative, go out and benchmark in it. Go benchmark developer experience, right? Just set up a quick poll. Hey, how's it going? Are the tools usable? These kinds of things. Go out and look at what his customer experience measurements are. What are our CSAT measurements right now? Can we do things like look at net promoter scores, right? Why? Because those are the things that matter to the business. And I can almost guarantee you that as you take on these next big challenges that you have, right? Whether it's a cloud shift, whether you're looking at a major AIOps initiatives, whether you're doing whatever in service management, doesn't matter. If you can actually increase availability, reduce downtime, and respond to your customers better, those numbers are going to go up. Take credit for them, right? Find ways to be able to do that. And these kinds of little gems are hidden everywhere in the organization. I used to sell endpoint management software, quite possibly the most boring software on the planet, right? There is nothing exciting or sexy about how you do patching, day zero initiatives, how you can do compliance and stuff. Nothing really exciting about it. But we actually found out in this particular organization, one of their big things was a massive green initiative in what they were doing. Well, it turns out one of the other things that endpoint management software can do is power control. So we started turning off machines and laptops and other stuff at night when nobody was using them. We did some back-of-the-napkin math, went to their CFO, checked out a couple of things, and it turned out that we were going to save something in the neighborhood of just under $1 million a year in just power costs in what these guys were doing. Took that back to the team we were working with, and it turned out that year there was actually an award. And that team got a $10,000 award to share amongst the team for this initiative. But here's the really interesting thing. In the 4 years that we went back and looked across that organization, the only note in the letter to the shareholders about an IT initiative was this one, that they had done something around green energy. Go find what your organization cares about and speak their language. Speak the language of the CFO. Speak the language of the CEO. Go look at the initiatives they care about, and what you're going to do is you look at these kinds of things like AIOps initiatives, you're going to align around those and actually help you create those outcomes out of that you want to do. So what does this really look like in, when we break this down? How do we get to that, our customer is better off? Well, number one, let's start with, we want to take all those signals out of the environment, right? I want to do things like take all of the events that are coming from monitoring tools, my APM tools. I want to see maybe, hey, what's Twitter saying right now? That's an event, right? Is their customer sentiment where it should be? Are they talking about you? Are they talking good things or bad things about you, right? Those are events, and they help us understand what's actually happening in our environment, in our customer-facing environment at any time. I also want to know things about my customer support teams. Are they opening cases on things right now? That's events. Those are things that I care about, right? I also want to be able to pull things out of my CI/CD pipeline. What about where am I at in my quality gates? Those are good events, right? I want to know, am I failing static code analysis when I get an incident? Is that something? Do I do a rollback? Whatever. I also want to know things about changes, right? Those are events. Those are really interesting events. What is the very first question we should ask when something goes wrong? What changed, right? It was working 20 minutes ago. It isn't now. It wasn't because a meteor hit it, right? Somebody changed something. So how do we begin to understand that? So let's start with those, being able to take all those events. We're going to dedupe those. We're going to suppress those. And then we're going to need a noise reduction. And I think, remember, that's the first problem we need to solve, is noise reduction. And what you need is a very simple way of being able to let machine learning do what machine learning does. The whole point of this exercise is let machines do what machines are good at. Let people do what people are good at. Machines are really good at the law of very large numbers, processing data at high speed, identifying patterns, at speed, and helping us understand, those end-to-end capabilities. So let's start with that. And the goal here is to take as much of the noise as possible out of the system. I also want to be able to do things like, hey, if I'm getting a port flapping or lane flapping event, I don't want 300 incidents out of that. In fact, I don't want any incidents out of that because it's actually going to solve itself. Right? How many times have you been called into, ended up with an incident in your lap, You come in, you log into the system, and guess what? It's gone, right? Because it was transient. It disappeared. So how do we let machine learning help us with that? How do we help us in a classic database failure, right? In a classic database failure, I'm going to get my database monitoring light up, my database client connection failures. I'm going to start to see my links start to stack up. My queues are going to stack up. My applications are going to start to trend off and get longer. I'm going to start getting network saturation as I'm sending multiple events around. Right? All of these things are lighting up. I may get as much as 60 different incidents being generated out of one failure. I only want one, right? Because only one of them is the underlying cause. Everything else is sympathetic. That's what we want to drive with noise reduction. Help me focus on what is actually the underlying problem. Then this is where I want to begin to demystify that event, right? What we consistently see is a lot of organizations we go into, they'll go and find that one smart person, and that person just gets pounded to death anytime there's any kind of problem, right? You end up with alert fatigue because you're the one that sort of has that magic decoder ring. We need to get that magic decoder ring out of your head and into a system. Well, it actually turns out there's some pretty simple ways that we can do that. So I want to be able to take that, mystery MySQL error and turn it into, hey, maybe my retail operations for Mumbai are currently compromised. That's a very different discussion than, yeah, HR isn't working, but it's 3 o'clock in the morning, everybody got paid yesterday, right? I don't want to wake anybody up for that. But retail's slowing down by 10%, everybody's waking up, right? Doesn't matter what time it is. We got to go fix that, right? Money's falling off the wagon. So we got to be able to do that. I also understand, where do I route this stuff to, right? Coming back to where do I fix it? It can't just be this, hey, the next step is please open Excel and go and find, the next person on their call or come into a call. I need that to be done automatically. I need a way that actually say that I'm tying these events into where they should actually go and what they actually want to drive and do. And then most importantly, thinking about how do I want to come out and drive the initial automation for these things at speed? How do I create those end-to-end capabilities on it? But here's where things get really interesting. What if automation's the first virtual responder? Now we're moving a whole lot faster, right? Before I light anybody up, maybe I want to come out and actually come in and start pulling things. So let's say Satish is my super smart network person. Every time Satish gets on a call, he does the ifconfig, ipconfig, traceroute, hopview, netstat, dumps the MPLS settings, virtual switch settings, right? Every time he does that because he's a good network admin. What if I know Satish is going to do that every time, why am I waiting on Satish? Aren't all those things I described, isn't that a simple script? And guess what? Satish has already got that script, right? Just that you don't. So what if instead we could begin to say, well, let's take Satish's script and just give it to the system and let it come out and begin to paint a picture of stuff, right? So now I'm starting to get diagnostics. I'm also, if you notice here, is that let's say that I'm Satish's backup. I know absolutely nothing about the problem. I'm a database guy. I could tell you about that damn MySQL error, but this network thing is completely foreign to me, right? So what if I could come in and look at that and say, well, what if there's a way that I could come in and now begin to solve the problem because Satish has already done the debug for me, even though he's not there. So I'm creating that context even though there's no, Satish isn't available. Well, and then, what's happening is when we think about this, right? Okay, so now whether it's Satish or whether it's me, we're on step 8, 9, or 10 of our run book, not step 1, right? Which is great. But the other part is how much faster are we going to move? Because now instead of, hey, I'm on call, so we get the alert that, so the error happens, monitoring finds it, which could be a half second, could be several seconds, could be several minutes, right, depending on the cycle time of the monitoring. Then we actually generate the alert. The alert comes in, I acknowledge the alert, right? I'm doing that in bed, in dark mode, rolling out of bed, trying to get to a laptop, figure out what's going on. And now I can get on and I can actually start running diagnostics. Well, guess what? If it's already there waiting for me, instead of that being 20 minutes, it's 1.5 minutes, it's 2 minutes, right? This is key because now I've got timeliness. So I'm going to be able to solve problems in the future much, much better. And that's the key to it. Now, what ideally would happen here, and again, coming back to our autonomic computing thing, is great. If I've got a great problem signature, fantastic. And I do work with clients that, in financial services and other areas, that have been able to build good problem signatures and have taken the MTTR for their Nginx clusters and their web servers down to 60 to 90 seconds, right? Good stuff. But again, most of the time, we need people. So how do we enable people to move faster? How do we create these feedback loops for them? How do we take your Wiki Confluence pages with your runbook and start to actually drive that directly into the system, that we begin to move much, much faster around the things that we do. How do we enable our froshes on our team to be able to perform much more quickly around what they do? They need context. They need the stuff that's in your brain, and instead of me coming in and shaking it out and saying, my friend, please, put down everything for the next 2 weeks, I'm just going to come in and debrief you, right? And write down everything you know. It doesn't work that way. Instead, if we can build a structural system that captures all the way that I maintain and manage the things that I do, I want to be able to drive and do that, right? I need to get to probable cause analysis. Be very, 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 very wary of vendors or anyone else you talk to that talks about we can always get you root cause. It's a very difficult thing to do, right? Question them on, push on. Anytime you see like a major airplane incident, crash, whatever, it is never a single thing. It is at least a set of 7 different steps and failures. And if you think about our complex interfaces, look, if it was easy, Kubernetes would have fixed it. Docker would have fixed it, right? Basic OS stuff, vMotion would have fixed it. These tend to be complex issues, right? So how do we get as close to the problem as possible and make sure that we begin to address it? So, in the end, what we're trying to build is build systems that have to scale and are ultimately resilient around the things they do. One of the #1 inhibitors to resilience, our Gartner talks about this in building resilient operations, is a lack of communications. People not knowing what's going on. How do we do good handoffs? How do we really create end-to-end capabilities? So you have to have a system that is event-driven, automation first, but still people-centric. We need people at the heart of what we do. And in order for that to be successful, we have to drive things in self-service, right? You can't have a method that says, I build the next centralized department of no. I was working with a customer and they had gone to their ServiceNow team and they actually asked them, hey, we need to do our next monitoring integration. 4 months. 4 months for them to do their next monitoring integration. Just as an aside, they set up PagerDuty, had their next monitoring integration done in 9 minutes. They walked around for a slide for the next 3 months, just showing everybody in the organization 9 minutes versus 4 months, right? We have to move at speed, and the way we do that is do it. I have to democratize access to data and actions, right? Satish deserves a vacation, but things still have got to get fixed. So what if I can think about, taking all of those kind of scripts that you guys do today? Everybody recognizes that, right? Everybody, when you want to go out and do something, you're not typing commands by hand. Right? You've got shell scripts, you've got PowerShell, you've got some Ruby out there, you've got something that you're doing these things with. What if instead we just began to gather that up, secure it, and build role-based access control so that other people can have access to those things around that? How does that begin to change things? Well, it means we're moving at speed, as we talked about. And I need to be able to create better data-driven decision making. So many times I hear people say, hey, my Splunk monitoring sucks. You can't fix monitoring sucks. What you can say is, hey, Splunk sent 300 inactionable events Saturday afternoon between 3 and 7 p.m. You can fix that. We need access to data that allows us to make better decisions. But most importantly, it must make you more productive. It must make your life easier. Of course it should save the company money. Of course we want to drive down MTTR. But if it doesn't make your job easier and make you better at your job, the whole thing breaks. I appreciate everybody's time today. Thank you all so very much.